Hello, everyone. I will speak in Hebrew in just a few sentences, then I will switch to English, and then we will start the lecture. And
Hi, guys. We're really excited to be here. Good morning.
Ellie.
Today we will be presenting making the most of your outreach. So what we do on Citrus Circuits in our outreach program and how we do that, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. I am Ellie Kim, and I am the DYR RoboCamps coordinator this year.
Hi, Ellie.
Livy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Ellie. It's Ty from Israel. I will do a introduce for the day. Yeah, and then we will start. Sorry that I take you a few minutes. I will start in Hebrew, just a few sentences, and then I will switch back to English. So sorry for the
Okay, well,
Hebrew
I'll be presenting with Livy Taylor, and she is the captain of our team. She's the captain of Citrus Circuits.
Okay, we're happy that you are here. שלום לכולם, כיף לראות שאתם ככה נמצאים איתנו בכנס. אנחנו באמת שמחים שזה הפעם החמישית שזה קורה. לצערנו הרב, מגפת הקורונה גרמה למה שגרמה, אבל אנחנו שמחים שאנחנו יכולים לארח קבוצה מחול. ואני אחליף עכשיו, אני מקווה שאתם נהנים, לומדים, מי שלא מזה אגב זה תמירו, פשוט אני באיזשהו סוג של אירוע והייתי צריך להתחבר, אז התחברתי ממש להרצאה ואני מתנצל ככה שזה נקרא. So I'll switch back to English. Hello everyone, I welcome our great team from United States, Davis, California, if I didn't miscorrect it, Citrus Circuits, 16 FRC team 1678. They are the first international team ever to be participate in MAC, which stands for Media Awards and Community. Our goal for a conference that we made 4 years ago, we started in Israel, and 4 years ago, MAC was founded with the goal to promote the awareness and involvement of the Israeli teams in the community outreach, awards, and media. This you understand. We started in small steps, and then we became the biggest and largest unofficial conference in First Israel. This year, we decided to go bigger than ever, as you can see, and we did something we never did before. This year, we invited 2 teams. The first one is here. The second one will be 1902 Exploding Bacon from Florida, United States, of course. And we hope you all be inspired and enjoy, and that will be a start of some new tradition. We have to do maybe make more international conference. For now on, it's more accessible for the Israeli teams, but it's okay. We will learn from that. And so without any further words, I would like to introduce our first ever international team. I'm very happy that you're here. 1678, yes, the stage is yours, and inspire us, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here. So I'll let Ellie introduce our presentation really fast.
Sorry about that. I did not. Yeah, my audio had some issues starting. So thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here. It's nice to see you all. We will be talking about how to make the most of your outreach program. And we are from Team 1678, Citrus Circuits, and we will be talking about our outreach program and what we did in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Ellie Kim, and I am the DYR RoboCamps coordinator this year, and I'll be presenting today. Livy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, yeah, my bad. I'm Livy. I'm the team captain, and last year, I was also the lead for our Chairman's Award submission team. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So I think one of the most important things to do when you're kind of considering your outreach and looking for ways to improve it or change it, especially in kind of a high intensity situation, is to sort of take a step back and kind of look at it as a whole and not at individual programs, and really try to understand what your team's goal of doing outreach was, so you can see if there are ways to still accomplish that goal in a different way. So we thought a couple of really important questions to consider was just, first of all, why do people do outreach in general? So I think our team's answer for that question is we do outreach to fulfill a need in our community that we have the resources to fulfill. So then, of course, you have to think, what kind of needs does my community have? Like, is there something that my team can do for our community to help them out, give people more access to programs, to resources, that type of thing. So once you've identified those kind of needs, and we'll go over a couple of examples with our own programs, you can start getting more specific. You can think about, what does my team have that can be used to fulfill those needs? Do we have space? Do we have materials? Do we have students? And then if you've identified a community need, and maybe there's already a program or like a process in place to support that, like maybe there's another club or something at your school that's already been, helping out kids after school, you can think, well, there's no need to make your own program to do that, but maybe you can reach out to them and help support an existing program with your own resources. And then in that way, you can kind of build some relationships with other groups in your community, and also make an even stronger program than you would have been able to make on your own. So just to give you a couple of examples, our Davis Youth Robotics program is it's a fairly large program aimed at much younger kids in our community, for them to be on smaller teams and create robots together. And so the idea behind this program was, we realized that in our town, the only opportunity for kids to participate in robotics was once they reached high school and could join our own team. And we decided that, why should a student have to wait until they're like 13 or 14 to do robotics, when we have the resources and the students that we need to create opportunities for younger children to get more engaged in STEM earlier on, and really like develop their passion for that topic. So that's where DYR came from. And because it's the only program of its kind in our town, that has made it really successful, because it was a program that the community we identified really needed. And so that kind of makes it so that it has no choice but to be successful, because it's something that's such a popular idea, because there's no other option for it. So next up, of course, we have our Shelter Finder program, which we use to connect homeless individuals with a police force or with homeless shelter volunteers. So we created this program because one of the needs we identified in our community is the homeless population might have a difficult time finding a safe place to spend the night, especially in bad weather, poor conditions. And so we created this app using our team's resource, that being programming knowledge, to create an app that would allow shelter volunteers or first responders a better way to provide help to those in need in our community. And then last of all, maybe some of you have heard of Citrus Service. It's a program that we run at events where we help out teams like kind of during the event. So if something goes wrong, like something breaks off of your robot and it's kind of a time crunch to fix it, or you're not quite sure what to do, we dedicate our students to helping other teams at competition and not helping our own team. And so in that way, kind of one of the needs we identified at events was that sometimes younger teams, especially like rookie teams, maybe they really struggled with bumpers because those are a pretty difficult topic. Some of the rules are a little confusing. And so we realized that our team has the resources and the team knowledge to help those students. And so that's why we created the program, to help out people who might not have been able to figure out that type of stuff on their own. So then, of course, you have your outreach kind of in normal times. I'm going to kind of switch gears a bit and talk about what our team's approach was to trying to change our outreach, but at least keep it running during the pandemic. So the first thing, of course, was because of the nature of the virus, we have to consider if the program requires in-person interaction. And if that's the case, it would probably be pretty difficult to continue it if it's like not able to be done over Zoom, that type of thing. So for instance, like Citrus Service might not be a great choice for trying to modify, because like building the robot is a very hands-on in-person type of thing that you need to do. And so there's not a lot of potential for modifying it to make it possible to continue. So like I said, you have to consider which of your programs have the potential to be modified, like you have a good foundation for how they're supposed to work and it wouldn't be too difficult to kind of change your processes a little bit to ultimately achieve the same goal. And then, of course, just because some programs just cannot be modified at all, you have to consider if there's some that you just have no choice but to stop doing until things hopefully will return to normal a little bit, such as for citrus service. But then kind of in a way, it's obviously not good that you have to stop some outreach, but you can kind of see a benefit in that being you can redirect those resources. So instead of having, 10 or 15 students working on citrus service, we now have 10 or 15 veteran members who have a lot more free time, who can use their technical knowledge in other fields to support people in a way that doesn't require in-person interaction. And so just like that, you have to consider, even if there's some things that are kind of poorly, like badly impacted by the pandemic and everything being shut down, you have to kind of look for opportunities, just like redirecting your resources. There's a lot of things that are different now. A lot of students might have more free time because school hours might be reduced. There's a lot of online software that makes it really easier than ever to connect with people online, like Zoom, Google Hangouts and Slack, that type of thing. So it's kind of a two-sided coin in a way. You have to give up some things, but it gives you opportunities to make the most of a lot of this situation. So just to give you a kind of explanation of a couple of the programs that we're going to go more in depth on in relation to how they changed during the pandemic, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how some of them work. Like I mentioned earlier, citrus service is for technical help at competitions. So we have the students at the event working. It's like when it's not at events, all that really goes on is preparing materials or training new members of the group. Then we have the Compass Alliance. It's a website. It has a couple of other features, but the part we're going to focus on is the online resource repository. So we have a lot of the teams who have volunteered to help out have shared their team resources or written new resources for teams to read through, to kind of give them a lot of detail on very FRC specific things like soldering for FRC or designing FRC robots. And that's completely online already. And then we have the RoboCamps, which are multiple sessions of week-long summer camps for building robots. So it's pretty much just a standard summer camp with robots at it. And so maybe you're already thinking how does the pandemic affect each of these ones? So of course, citrus service, they're kind of color-coded here. Citrus service does not really have a lot of potential to continue because all the events were canceled by FIRST. So we have pretty much no choice but to stop it. There's not really a different way to approach it. Whereas for the Compass Alliance, pretty much nothing changed. All of the organization was already done over phone calls and video calls. All the resources were already online. So in that way, the Compass Alliance actually has a lot of potential for expansion, because when citrus service gets canceled, that leaves a lot of our technically knowledgeable members with a lot of free time and ability to redirect their resources towards supporting the Compass Alliance. And so in that way, we can move the resources that we were using on citrus service to support the Compass Alliance. And so in that way, the pandemic doesn't kind of lessen the amount of outreach you do, because even if you have to kind of stop supporting one area, you can lift another even higher than it already was. And so in that way, the Compass Alliance is going to be going through a lot of, growth and development over the coming months, as our team has a lot more time and resources to dedicate to it. And then, so for RoboCamps, it's a slightly different story. It's highlighted in yellow as, well, so it's kind of like when you go back to the way you were thinking about your outreach and the purpose of it. The purpose of RoboCamps, in some ways, is to kind of act as babysitting for kids. Part of the appeal of summer camps is that a parent doesn't have to take care of their kids for 5 days a week of the summer. So that is one benefit. But another benefit of RoboCamps is kind of the technical aspect where kids get to spend some time working with robots in a less structured school kind of way. So it's more of a fun activity, and it oftentimes can get them a lot more engaged. And so while some of the RoboCamps kind of does require in-person interaction, our team found a couple of ways that we could actually modify the program and allow it to continue even while our area was under quarantine. So we took advantage of the resources, like I mentioned earlier, of Zoom and having our students have more free time than usual to modify RoboCamps, but still ultimately allow them to continue in a lot of the same way that they were happening before. And so Ellie will actually be covering that in great detail very soon. But just kind of the takeaway from this slide is, if you consider all of your outreach programs together, even if some of them may not be able to continue, there's always a way to kind of redirect those resources, make sure at least you're able to continue something, just so that the pandemic doesn't end up being like we had to shut down all of our outreach and we're all really, really sad about it. At least you can find ways to continue. You can find ways to continue what you were doing before, even if it does require thinking outside of the box a little bit.
Awesome. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll cover this one really fast. I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of FRC teams using their resources to create PPE or personal protective equipment like masks and stuff. But we thought it was just another example of, instead of modifying your existing outreach, going back to the process from the very beginning of the presentation, where you think about what needs does my community have. Well, now since everything has changed in this way, our community does have a new need, especially when the pandemic was just beginning. Face masks were in very short supply, and parts for ventilators were also very difficult to come by. And so our team realized that we have kind of the manpower and the time and the materials to help address that need and support our community in a new way that wouldn't really have been required or asked for if the pandemic wasn't going on. So you just see here a couple of photos. One of our mentors, Manda, has been spending a lot of time making masks to donate. A couple of students have also been helping out with that. In the middle, we used our 3D printers to make some parts for ventilators, I believe. They're kind of like valves. And so we were able to make a bunch of those because we weren't making robot parts anymore. So we were able to kind of change the purpose of our machines. And then on the left, that is a ginormous roll of plastic that we used to cut into face shields. So not exactly a mask, but it covered up someone's whole face. So it kind of prevented droplets from getting too close to their face and that type of thing. So yeah, just I guess the takeaway here is always considering why you're doing the outreach. And when you go back to the kind of root cause of the outreach, you can kind of identify where you can even start new outreach even in normal times. And especially now, do people still need their kids to be spending time doing stuff? Do people still need their kids to be babysat, basically? And you can, even if you have to change your outreach a little bit, you can keep it running or make it more effective for those who would take part in it or be impacted by it.
Okay, so I'm going to go in depth into our RoboCamps program and what we did in 2019 versus 2020 and how we changed. So if you remember the slide that Livy showed earlier with all the reasons why we do outreach, and then the one that showed the different pathways of our outreach programs, you'll know that we had to decide what we're going to do with this program. So originally in 2019, these were all in-person camps. So the RoboCamps are summer camps for kids 4th through 8th grade who just want to learn more about robotics and compete and have a fun time. So as you can see in this picture here, they're practicing for their competitions and building their robots. So in 2019, everybody was in person. We had all the counselors and campers in this big room here working together on robots and collaborating and competing. But we realized even though this environment is mainly in person, we could modify it to work with it virtually so that we could still host our summer camps online. So in 2019, we had 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. camp days, which isn't exactly feasible on Zoom, but we'll show you how we modified that. And then the counselors were loosely assigned to groups to help out, but they could roam around and help different people. Livia, if you can change the slide. But we had to make a lot of changes because of the COVID pandemic. So what we did first was we decided we had to make this a virtual platform because we want all of our campers and our counselors and our mentors and everybody to stay as safe as possible and to follow the stay-at-home orders that we were given in California. And then we decided to modify our current refund and scholarship policies. So before the pandemic, we would not just do refunds, no questions asked, and we would not grant everybody a scholarship. We would have a whole process. But because we understood a lot of the community needs that were happening in light of this COVID-19 pandemic and the financial crisis that some people were going through, we decided that we would offer refunds, no questions asked at any point before your camp starts. So somebody could come up to us and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't afford this. Because when we originally put out all of our registration pages, it was before the pandemic. So people could have registered and paid before they needed their money back. So they could ask for a refund at any time now because of these changes. And then we decided that we were going to grant all scholarships because these people who want to participate in our camp should be able to, regardless of whether they are able to pay for it or not. It helps us if they pay for it, but our community is more important to us. So that is the purpose of our outreach, and that is what we're striving to do. And then we also had to adjust a lot of the logistics. So in 2019, all forms would be delivered directly to us on the first day of camp, and we would have all of the kits full of the parts for the kids to build robots with in our building. But that's clearly not feasible anymore because we can't have these kids inside our buildings and interacting with each other because we don't want to spread a disease. So instead, we made all of our forms online, and then they are delivered to us when they pick up their kits. So we have parents come with masks and do an outside exchange where they pick up a kit and leave their forms, and then they drive away so that everybody can get their forms into us and get their kits and t-shirts and whatever else they need without having to come into contact with other people. We also decided to change schedules and times this year. So so last year's schedule was a 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. day of camp, so kids would be there the entire time. But because we know from what we did during the last half of our distance learning program in schools and just from Zoom exhaustion in general, we understand that we can't have 4th through 8th graders sitting at a desk and staring at their computer for that many hours. So what we decided to do instead was to create 2 blocks of time. So we would have a 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. period of time and a 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. period of time where they would come on a Zoom call with counselors and work together with them in order to get the instruction and the face-to-face time that they need without being really tired and restless on Zoom. And then for the rest of the time, because we wanted to still try and provide the same amount of hands-on learning that they would get in a normal camp, was so 10 to 12 would be the independent work time for the kids. So they would be able to go off on their own and explore the robot and do what they wanted to do and work on the robot on their own. But they could also come on the Zoom call again and get help from counselors or other people who are still on the call and ask questions and still hopefully get as close to the same experience as we could give them. We also decided to do breakout rooms this year. So originally, we were thinking when we were going to switch to a virtual platform to possibly put all the counselors and campers into one big Zoom room like we have here, like we would do in 2019 when we just had everybody in this big room working together. But we realized quickly that that would be impossible because everybody would be talking over each other and nobody would get a very good experience. So we decided to do breakout rooms this year. In the previous years, we had partnered kids together and then given a counselor assigned to a couple different groups of kids. But the counselors would still be flexible and able to change groups if necessary. So this year we grouped kids and one counselor in different breakout rooms with a few other counselors to help out that I will go over a little bit later. Livy, can you change the slide? So this year, this is the 2020, our first year of virtual RoboCamps. So I went over the breakout rooms and what we do for each day of camp. But to cope with the pandemic, we realized that we can't have all the same types of challenges that we did in the previous years, especially not a competition, because we can't have kids in person interacting with each other and the robots. So we decided to implement different challenges that one of them would be to stack some cubes, because we realized that we can't give them a whole game field for each kid. So we gave them a couple of objects to stack. So we gave them different colored cubes this year, and they would have to try and stack them or sort them or do different things depending on their week of RoboCamps, because we have always had a couple of different types of RoboCamps, those being the introductory/intermediate group for the newer kids who have never done robotics before or never done this specific type of robotics before, and then intermediate and advanced camps for the kids who are more experienced or are ready or older and are ready to take on more of a challenge. The girl-powered RoboCamps, which are camps specifically geared toward girls to encourage diversity in STEM and girls in STEM. And then our advanced programming RoboCamps, which are RoboCamps geared specifically toward the programming aspect of robotics and for kids who are already experienced with code or looking for specifically a coding challenge. And we make different challenges for all of these different types of camps. And I will be showing you a video later on the advanced programming ones if we have some time. So instead of the competition at the end of the week, we decided to do a show and tell where each kid could send us videos and pictures of their robot, and we would display them, and then they could show us a live version of maybe a program or a driving challenge. And everybody could see what everybody else was doing and still work together and have that same experience, that collaborative, interactive experience that we could try and that we would provide in our regular RoboCamps. Livy, can you change the slide? So our roles this year were a little bit different. So in 2019 and all of our previous years, we had always had an adult mentor, a lead counselor, and the regular counselors. But this year we added a Zoom counselor, and we had things that were a little bit different than what they normally did. So adult mentors would now also have to be responsible for managing any of the robot kits that weren't picked up or people who needed to drop off forms. So they have to give those kits to people and possibly drop off extra parts if some people are missing parts. Always at a safe distance and with personal protection equipment. And then the lead counselor is a student counselor. All these other roles are student roles. So the lead counselor is the head of their week, and they lead meetings, they give the announcements, and they manage any issues between campers and etc. So our newest role is the Zoom counselor, who troubleshoots any technical difficulties with the software or whatever other issues that might be going on. And then they run the Zoom meeting, and they manage all the breakout rooms and all the actual organizational aspect of Zoom and the week. And then all the other counselors are within their breakout rooms, and they are assisting the campers and trying to provide everybody with a great time. Livy, please change the slide. So when we switched to the virtual landscape, we came across some problems and some solutions for these problems. So I want you guys to all understand what we had difficulties with so that you can learn from what we figured out and hopefully go on to build a great outreach program of your own. So one of our issues was that a lot of kids were having some common problems, but the knowledge is harder to share. So in our in-person camps, a counselor could just be like, oh yeah, I've seen that problem before, like this person over here had it. But because everybody's in their own breakout room, if a different group has one type of problem and another group has the same type of problem, it's less likely for both of those counselors to know like that this is a common problem and the solution to that common problem. So what we did about this was we created a shared document of counselor resources that we would send out to every week, detailing some of the common issues and common solutions for those issues, and then tips and tricks on how to work in this virtual landscape. And then what we also did was we had a debrief of counselors at the very beginning of the day and at the very end of the day, so that they would be prepared for what was to come, and they would learn more together afterward based on what had happened in that day of camp. A second issue with going online is that it's sometimes a lot harder to engage your campers or whoever is your student in this situation. So it's harder to engage younger children, especially if you're on a screen and you can't like just tap on their shoulder or whatever. But you can engage them online by like playing a game with them or interacting with them at all. Like one of the counselors I saw this year, he was always talking to his campers, and he's always like, hey, what did you guys do this week? Are you guys interested in blah blah blah? What's your favorite challenge? And that really kept all of his campers really engaged and talking with him and having a great time. So that is one of the most important parts of this landscape. You have to make sure that your students or your campers or whoever you're working with is engaged and excited to work with you. Another issue with the virtual landscape is that it's harder to troubleshoot things you can't see. So some kids would have their video turned off or whatever, and the counselors were having a difficult time trying to fix what was wrong with their robot if they couldn't see their robot. So what we did is that we decided that we were going to require all videos during Zoom to be turned on so that everybody can see each other's robots and see each other's faces, because person-to-person interaction is really important, especially during a quarantine where you can't do that. And then we also said that we could screen share code. So a lot of kids, if they were having an error in their code, like it's hard to notice that error just by watching the program run on the robot and not seeing the actual code itself. So every time somebody would have a coding issue, we would just screen share it. Livy, next slide. A few more of our issues were technical difficulties. So what we did to solve that is we implemented the Zoom counselor role to manage all technical difficulties. And then we also have a parent meeting at the beginning of the week where people can test their Zoom. So test their audio and their video and their sound and all that. And then we also have practice and experience with Zoom. So I train all the Zoom counselors individually beforehand, and we go through everything you'll have to do as a Zoom counselor. And then all of our counselors have experience with Zoom, whether it be through one of these trainings or through just being part of such a circuits, because all of our team meetings are on Zoom. And then our last and probably our biggest issue is miscommunication. If you have miscommunication, your program will not run effectively, because this is the most important part of running something online where you can't be face-to-face and do all these things. So you need to make sure you're like making your announcements in your meeting, every meeting, reminding these kids over and over again to do whatever they need to do, because we're teaching 4th through 8th graders, so sometimes they require multiple reminders. And then you have to update your websites or whatever platform all your information is on, so that everybody always has current up-to-date info that they can access whenever they need it. And then we sent many, many, many emails. Communicate with your parents or whoever you're working with so that they understand what's going on and they aren't confused, and you can help them out or answer their questions or do whatever. And then on Citrus Circuits, we use a platform called Slack, which is like a messaging program for businesses or teams or organizations generally that have a bunch of different channels and things like that. So we use those all the time, especially as counselors, where we can't just always be in each other's breakout rooms or whatever, because we have kids that we need to work with. So what we do is we have everybody active on Slack at all times, so that if a counselor has a difficulty with somebody or a problem that they can't solve, they can send a message into Slack, and the other counselors and the head counselor and Zoom counselor will know what's going on, and they can fix whatever their issue is. Okay, next slide. So those were all of some of the issues we had, but there are a lot of benefits of going virtual during this pandemic also, because your participants can be from anywhere. We had a girl from Oregon participate in our RoboCamps, which wouldn't have been able to be possible if we were to have them in California in our school building. But with online, you can have them from anywhere as long as they have the supplies that they need. Another nice thing about going virtual is that sessions can be recorded. So if somebody can't make a session, you can just record the session, or you could record a session and, like, if it's a workshop or something like this, you could record it and post it on a website or something so that more people can access it, even if they're not available during the time that the meeting is going on. Something very important about our program, specifically going online during this pandemic, is that people still get the social and collaborative skills that they would have during our regular RoboCamps, even though we have a quarantine and we can't see each other face to face. This is extremely important, especially for younger kids, like the 4th graders will be teaching, because they need as much exposure to social environments as they can. But we want to give this to them safely, so we can still have this experience online, even though we have all the shelter-in-place orders and things like that. And then finally, for us, we can give these kids a learning hands-on experience over summer, which is sometimes hard to come by, and then also through shelter-in-place and through this whole pandemic. Please change the slide. So finally, here are some tips for running a virtual program. If you plan to run your own, or if you plan to modify your own outreach programs that you have already, you still need to know these things to run a successful virtual program. So you need to be able to stay flexible and modify your programs to fit the needs of the community and your policies to best suit you and your users. So like how we modified all of our policies in our program and are a little bit more flexible about issues that may come up with campers. And then you need to make sure you're communicating very well. So you have to communicate consistently and openly with everybody involved. Your coworkers, the people who you're giving these services to, maybe your superiors, if you have any. You have to communicate with everybody you're working with so that everybody stays updated and everybody has the same information and everybody's on the same page to go forward. You should know your platforms. So we worked with Zoom and Slack mainly for RoboCamps, and everybody had used these before, and we offered trainings on Zoom. So everybody who needed to know what to do knew how to do it. And then make sure you are training people ahead of time so that they know what to do when it's their turn to do something. And then make sure you learn from your mistakes. What we did this year was we had a document of like all of the tips and tricks that we were learning for each week, and we would send it out to the next week of camp so that everybody could stay updated on what we had learned through this virtual experience. Livy, can you change the slide? And that is all we have for today. So thank you so much for listening to us. You can contact us at admin@citruscircuits.org. That's our email. It's on the slide if you want to email us if you have any questions. And then if you have any questions right now, I think we can take questions if everybody's okay with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If nobody has any questions, we can show our advanced programming video right now. So we did a video that explains the challenges that we're having this year for the kids who are doing the advanced programming camp. So our students made this video.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I don't have any question, and I will let you to see the video in a moment. But as the founder and of the conference, I want to say thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and it's really good to see that an international team that is not only best on the robot field is also great and inspire at the community field. And we hope it's something of starting of a great tradition of having international teams in Israel International Conference. It's I think in Israel it's the first time that an international team is having a lecture, but I don't know for exactly. I'm not like a historical guy to ask him, but for us it really had been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been great presenting with you guys.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you can we'll let you know the video. Sorry, I'm a little bit excited and I had a rough day. Okay, so.
All good. Yeah, again, this is a really great experience and we're glad we were able to participate.
Olivia, is your audio on for your video?
Oh, yeah, my bad. There we go. Let me know if it's too loud.
RoboCamps Week and the 2020 Challenge, Cube Chaos. Throughout the workplace and the home, robots are becoming a vital part of our everyday lives. In this week's RoboCamp, each camper and the robot have to complete a collection of autonomous programs in order to increase the efficiency at their company, Amazon. In the first of 3 challenges, the Maze Challenge requires the robots to navigate through an ever-changing maze with only the help of sensors. Representing drive units in many warehouses, robots must be able to navigate people and other obstacles in order to carry their items to a destination. To simulate the work of robotic arms, such as palletizers, which are used in Amazon warehouses throughout the world, robots must pick up and sort different colored cubes in the block sorting challenge. Cubes are laid out in the spots shown, but the colors can be arranged at random. The robot is responsible for collecting each cube and either sorting or stacking them. In the final challenge, robots replicate the job of Roombas and other cleaning robots by picking up cubes from randomized spots on the floor and then stacking the cubes. Since this challenge requires a vision sensor, beware the difficulty of this challenge, campers. Ready your robot, download your programs, and get ready to drag and drop blocks with this year's Advanced Programming Challenge, Cube Chaos.
Yeah, so that was an example of the types of challenges we provide our campers, especially in the light of this pandemic. So we give the campers all the cubes that you saw on the screen so that they can complete all these types of challenges.
That's very impressive.
Thank you very much, Olivia and Ellie. Hope we can stay in touch as Israeli teams with Citrus, and thank you for agreeing to join our conference and lecturing. We learned a lot.
Thank you for inviting us. It was great, and I definitely agree. I think it would be really fun to kind of make this a tradition and continue with it year after year. So it was great to work with you guys.